Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1283 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Monday evening into Tuesday. And thank you for joining us, as always, on the podcast. Make us your first listen each and every day. Check us out on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, as well as YouTube, and all across the podcast channel of your preference. Today's podcast is myself and Wes Morton of Peachtree Hoops, talking about Summer League, as well as some roster takeaways from the early part of the offseason. Of course, the Hawks might be done at this juncture, but there's still plenty to discuss. And as a reminder, if you are a new listener to the podcast, I don't go away in the offseason. We're going to be here every single week, multiple times between now and training camp in September. So stay tuned for all of that stuff. Subscribe to the podcast. And after a quick intro, you will come back and you'll hear from myself and Wes Morton on Summer League and more.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I am joined now by a person who was also in the Las Vegas desert for quite some time and a writer at Peachtree Hoops, Wes Morton. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing all right. Yeah, it's pretty hot out there in the desert, but had a fun time,
Yeah. Listen, you were there longer than most people ever should be. I was there way longer than I should be. Every year I do this where I stay like 2 days too long, trying to cover as much of the Hawk stuff as possible. And but I wanted to have you on, knowing that you were out there and you saw everything in person, just like I did. And outside of Glenn Willis, our friend and colleague, who actually enjoys Summer League basketball more than anybody else possibly could. How was your first experience out there? I know we were talking before we started recording. You hadn't even been to Vegas, much less Summer League. So what did you take away from being up close and personal?
Yeah, it's definitely an experience. I mean, it was fun. I mean, obviously it is what it is. You're watching a lot of recent draftees, watch a lot of guys fighting for roster spots. So the quality of the basketball itself is definitely kind of comes and goes. Yes. Depending on what kind of rosters are out there. But I think the fun part about it is obviously a lot of the fans are neutral if they're watching a game. So a player makes a big play, like the whole crowd oohs and ahs. They're not this like home and away environment. So everyone's just kind of there to see, all the big players, the Chet Holmgrens and the Paolos. Then, you kind of have the different venues between Cox Pavilion and Thomas and Mack. So the Hawks, 2 of the games I saw were in the Cox, so it's kind of like a smaller, more intimate setting. But it's a fun experience. Like just kind of like the whole world, the whole NBA world is focused all on Vegas. So that was fun about it.
Yeah, for sure. And just for people that have never been, there's the 2 arenas. One is Thomas and Mack, where UNLV plays. One is Cox Pavilion, which is a much smaller venue, and it's they've gotten smarter over the years about what games they put in there. They used to just not think about it, and they'd have like some of the best draft picks playing in Cox Pavilion, and it would just be a complete madhouse in there. Now the big names generally play in the big arena for the most part, and the Hawks only played there I think once all week in Thomas and Mack, if I'm remembering right. So yeah, it's interesting, kind of walk back and forth. And I know we are covering the Hawks for the most part on this podcast, but it is quite a basketball convention experience if you want it to be. You can walk back and forth. You can watch as many games as you want or as little as you want. I have friends that cover the league that will kind of admit they only watch like very little basketball, even though they're in the arena all day, because you can just talk to people all day long if you want to.
You really yeah, I can understand that. I mean, it, like I said, it really just depends, if there's certain players that are out there, you're not really caring as much for, one team versus the other. Like, who cares about the Celtics versus the Nets or whatever. But, I need to see this one player, a lot of hype, kind of interested in see how he does. And, maybe some of the other time you kind of tune out and just talk to your friends. And I definitely saw a lot of, obviously not people I had like relationship with, but people who I knew were in the league, whether they're in front office, a scout, like just to have like everybody walking around. And obviously they talk about how, if you hear reports that, a lot of the GMs and the front office people are talking there at, as well as the reporters in the media. So it's kind of, it's different to have everyone in one place where you can just have a chance meeting of, talking, basketball, but also the behind the scenes, the business part or the behind the scenes media part. Yeah. So it's just that all one experience more than just the basketball itself.
Oh yeah. It's definitely an experience. That's the best part about it. And you can even outside the arena, you can't walk 100 feet in Vegas without seeing somebody that you recognize. Kind of, it's like, wait, is that who I think it is? And you kind of have to look double takes of like, oh, that's a player. I can't remember who that is. And anyway, it's a wild scene. At any rate, I'm glad you got to see it up close and personal, and I definitely wanted to get your thoughts on the Hawks stuff because it was not exactly the most high-profile Hawks run in the world, in part because Eddie Griffin never played. I've been talking about him every day for the last 10 plus days about him not playing and the updates and all that stuff. I know he wasn't out there, but I'll just ask you this way: does it concern you at all? Because like based on what I can pass along, no one's really worried about Griffin's foot internally. Now, obviously, it could become a problem long term, but what do you how much do you care that he didn't play in terms of like development wise? Obviously, it would have been fun to actually have him there for interest perspective, but does it bother you at all, like long term, that he didn't play in Vegas?
I don't think so. I mean, development wise, I'm not a player development person necessarily, but it's 5 games. It's in a modified environment. You just got drafted and kind of thrown in there with a lot of guys who come from a lot of different backgrounds. So I don't think it's anything that's going to set them back. I think the smart thing the Hawks did was, they said based on some of the reports, including from you, is that a lot of it was just a pain management thing as opposed to like, a structural issue with the foot. So it was more just a precaution holding them out. I don't know if you have any information about if he practiced at all or.
Yeah, they basically what Nate said, and then what I was told after Nate spoke on the broadcast about it one day was basically like he practiced the first day. He had a little bit of discomfort in the foot, and they basically said, we're not practicing you or playing you until you don't have discomfort in your foot, basically, which is a very normal thing to do. Like, unfortunately for us, and I think just for PR sake, it would have been a little bit easier if they just said, okay, he's out for summer league. But they didn't want to do that because he had an MRI. It was clean. It showed nothing of concern. So like, I think there are a lot of the fan stuff. I'm sure you saw some of this too in your replies, was like people mad that he wasn't, it was his day-to-day thing. Like, was he going to play or not? I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you. He's not ruled out and he's not playing. And eventually he just missed all 5 games. So I get why that's frustrating. It was frustrating for me. It would have been easier for my coverage plan had I known 10 days ago that he wasn't going to play the whole time. I would have known that. It would have been a lot easier for me too. But I think they're just being extremely safe. And they know, I mean, just like you just said, they know that like the actual impact of him being on the court for games in summer league is not very important. I understand it's the one thing that we can actually see on the outside, which I think places additional importance on it. And we'll get into that with Sharif Cooper in a second, I'm sure. But I think that big picture, if you're in the front office or if you're on the coaching staff, him not playing 4 or 5 games in Vegas does not actually change anything, as long as the foot's okay. And they keep saying that it is, and I have no reason to doubt that. So as long as the MRI is clean, as I said, like hopefully he's okay for training camp, and we go from there.
Right. So, that's there'll be plenty of times this offseason, if it really is a pain management thing. I mean, just based on what it sounded like, they kept, they didn't rule him out for the whole summer, like you said. It was always, an hour before game. So I'm sure they were testing it out, seeing how he was, kind of decide that, the pain is too much, or the risk of, re-injuring that foot is too much. Like, I think that's just if you're taking a long-term view of AJ Griffin, like you just drafted a guy mid-first round, 4 years of cost control. You don't want to start him out with, an injury that's going to be nagging him, over the course of this year or possibly beyond. So I think it's, like I said, it's tough for the public. People want to see. Obviously, he would have been the number one guy on the team. But as far as long-term development, I think the risk of injury is more than the benefit he would have gotten from playing summer league.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely the case. We'll get into this in a second with regard to Sharif Cooper, because I don't want to bring the mood down too much, but I know that's probably the number one topic. But before we get to that, a quick word here from our sponsors. We'll come back with more on Sharif and Trae Martin and everything else from the Hawks offseason. Today's show is brought to you by Built Bar, from the folks that invented healthy and tasty. Comes the latest gift for your taste buds. You've actually probably already tried the amazing coconut brownie chunk Built Bar, but guess what? Your friends at Built have given the brownie chunk the puff treatment as well. That's right, coconut brownie chunk Built Bar flavor you love, and a deliciously chewy marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. It's like a fluffy cloud of coconut brownie goodness. Stop drooling now and listen. They're actually good for you as well. They are low calorie, they are low sugar, high protein, and all delicious. The puffs are only here for a limited time. Go to Built.com right now to make sure you don't miss out. They're going fast because they actually taste amazing. And all Built Bar is also made with collagen protein, which your body helps to absorb more efficiently, and they provide a ton of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good for you, and there actually is good for you in terms of a health perspective. The best part about puffs is that they actually taste great. They're also guilt-free, and they have all kinds of fantastic flavors across the board at Built Bar, including, of course, this brownie chunk Built Bar flavor. Go to Built.com right now to take advantage of all the amazing flavors and offerings that they have at Built. And when you get there, use promo code LOCK15, 15% off on your order with Built Bar. One more time, that is Built.com, promo code LOCK15, 15% off at Built.com. Okay, Wes, let us quickly dive into Sharif Cooper, because I think that's the looming thing out there. I read the numbers that he produced in Summer League on the show that I did Saturday night, but I'm going to say them again now for anybody that might have missed them. And I don't mean to pile on, but they are pretty ugly. He averaged 4.4 points a game in Summer League across 5 outings. He averaged about 3 rebounds. Less than 2 rebounds, 4.2 assists, about 3 turnovers per game, and also shot 19% from the floor and 18% from 3. It is a small sample size, but anytime you have numbers that are like that jarring, it is pretty rough. And I know you saw it like I did. He did not play well really for any long stretch of time. I thought he was better, and you can correct me if you think that I was wrong about this. I thought he was better in games 3 and maybe a part of game 4 as well. The first couple games was really rough, and then game 5 only played the first half and was kind of just non-existent in that way. I'll tee you up this way, though. The way that I framed it, and again, I'm not trying to pile on because I like Sharif, but if you did not know that he was supposed to be a prospect and you only saw Summer League, would you have thought he was a prospect? Because my answer to that is no.
No. I mean, you take the name out of it. You take the fact out that he's, from the area, went to nearby school, Auburn, like that whole thing. Like you just think it's, frankly, just one of those guys who it's going to be unlikely for him to be on a roster. Just kind of one of those guys fighting for position and didn't really showcase himself. But yeah, all of the kind of hype around him over the past year is kind of unfortunate when you see his performance this summer, right? Because then it's right, you have that cycle of hype and then the letdown. So I mean, as far as his play, like obviously it was pretty ugly. Yeah, like you read off the shooting numbers. I think some of it was, to me, most concerning. The fact that was most concerning was probably his passivity.
Yep.
The fact that towards the end of last year, he was putting up pretty big numbers in G League with Skyhawks. He went up for some 30-point, 10 assist games. So especially over the last 10 games of the season, had some accolades by the end of the year. But he got off to a little bit of a rough start, and then he kind of just stopped looking for a shot. He was trying to set up others. Didn't really look like he was trying to get past guys on his dribble. I have to mention, obviously, he had the finger injury that he'd been dealing with. So who knows if that played a part, if that played a part in him not being confident in his dribble. But yeah, and just him not being able to find a rhythm, being passive, trying to set up others, and not getting to a shot. That's Cooper's way to the league at his size, at the point guard position, when you're 6 foot, like you've got to be able to get to your shot somehow, got to be able to create that separation. And kind of looked like he was doing that in the G League last year, and under pretty similar talent, competition around here in Summer League, it just didn't look good for him. So, I mean, as far as his future with the club, who knows? But I really can't really understate how disappointing his performance was.
Yeah, and I will say, his G League numbers, and I know people are going to roll their eyes at the G League, and I do get that. But honestly, in terms of structure and in terms of more difficult environments to play in, more challenging environments, the G League quality of play during the season is higher than Summer League. Obviously, the top end talent is not the same. Like, you don't have your first round picks on the floor a lot of the time. But for the most part, I would say G League regular season games are is a better quality actually than Summer League. And Sharif averaged in 22 games, about 17 points, 7 assists, and shot like decent from the floor, 43% from the floor, 36% from three. Like his numbers look totally fine in the G League. And like, I have a hard time believing that he's just a different player now. Like, obviously you mentioned the thumb. People keep asking me, and I'll address it again here. Like the thumb, I'm sure played some part in this. I don't think you could use that as an excuse for him being this bad, is the way that I would say. Like, I do give him a little bit of a pass for that because that's a shooting hand, his dribble, like, and at his size, he can't afford to be a little bit less of anything, really. That's one of the limitations that he has. He's got to be himself. But you don't get just 100% pass for that either, though. Like, you can't just attribute all of it to that. And what you said, the passivity was really the weird thing. And the one game that he wasn't passive, I think he was like 4-15 from the floor. Like, it's almost like he decided that game that he was going to just shoot every time. Like, he was almost too shot happy in that game to kind of overcompensate for the others. But I mean, he didn't take a shot in the finale on Saturday until there was like 2 minutes left in the first half, and it was like, man, he's 0 for 0. He's just kind of just out there, and it's a weird thing. And I know Van Exel gave me a couple quotes about like him having pressure on him and all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, guys have pressure on them for sure, and I think he probably knew it was a big summer for him, but it just wasn't not what you want to see. And listen, I've always liked him, but one of the things you cannot do if you're his size is play like that. Like he can't be just a guy out there because defensively he's never going to be very good at his size. So he's got to have a real command of the offense and like be really aggressive, and as a playmaker in particular. If he doesn't do that, that's really his only path to being an NBA player, is being the high end creator that he was supposed to be. And he's shown flashes of that. It just wasn't there in summer league.
Yeah. He had some, like you say, he's had some playmaking moments. Game 3, Game 4, like you said. I think he had
9 assists in the third game. Yeah.
But he was also turning the ball over a ton. So I mean, his just turnover ratio was like a little bit over 1. So even the playmaking was still pretty shaky at times. He's making some bad decisions. So I mean, like I said, you really can't blame it all on the thumb. I think I don't know if there's other things going on, or just like I said, I didn't expect, obviously after what we saw last year, like you said, I didn't expect him to. There's got to be something else between him falling off. He's pretty much the same player he was like 4 or 5 months ago or whatever. There may be something else going on, but just a pretty poor performance, and we'll see what happens from here.
Yeah, I don't want to keep going on too much on that, but at least that was the number one topic besides Griffin. I guess the number 2 topic is Trae Martin, who the Hawks signed to a multi-year deal on Saturday that I broke down the terms of on that podcast. I won't go crazy into that now, but he's going to be on the roster this year, rookie minimum contract, and I think he played pretty well, particularly had some really intriguing like creation flashes getting to the rim. Perimeter shooting was not fantastic for Martin. I think like 28% from 3, and that's one of the questions that even Landry Fields kind of acknowledged at the draft and after the draft, was like their shooting is something that they're not 100% sure on with him. I think he did shoot well as a senior at UConn, but before that it was not great. And that's maybe the one question mark, but there was really a lot to like in terms of the way he was, particularly in attack mode, I thought. What did you make of what you saw from him? And obviously, I think he led the team in minutes as well, so he was out there quite a bit.
Yeah, I think it was pretty big for him, big summer league, because obviously you're sort of in that in-between area when you're a second-round pick. You don't have that guaranteed contract, so you really do have to showcase yourself. And he had a rough first game. He looked like he was, not shooting the ball well, not finishing at the rim. But after that, he was able to beat his man. Like you could tell, he had a pretty good handle for his size. He's able to beat guys, get to the rim, finish, and create for others. And I mean, so this is kind of what you want to see out of a guy who was in college for 4 years. So you kind of figured they're going to be more advanced than a guy who's 19. So he, I think it was definitely good, and obviously to hear that he got signed to a 2-year contract. I think he had a partial guarantee in the second year, or maybe completely non-guaranteed in the second year. I think that's basically what all the second rounders are looking for, something like that, where you can get a full-time contract out of it. So, I mean, I don't think this means he's gonna crack the rotation from day one with the Hawks, but definitely looks like when you're picking 51st in the draft, just to be able to see a guy really take on and be the number 1 guy on a summer league team that next year is a good sign.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what I would say is don't go crazy. Like I'm not picking on this person. I saw someone on Twitter today say that he was better than Kevin Huerter already, and I was like, well, I think we've lost the plot. If that's I like Tyrese Martin. I like that draft pick. It was a solid value. He looked good in summer league. I think that he's still a late second round pick and who will be a rookie, and you have to keep your projections in sort of a reasonable range. But you mentioned the first game. I think he was 1 of 9 in that opener, and after that, he was like 55% from the floor. Like he played a lot better after that first game. So that's good to see. I do think that, you wish he was like maybe a little bit bigger than he is. I don't know what he's actually listed at, but I think he's probably like in the 6'5" range. Like he's not, I think he's listed at 6'6". I think he's probably like 6'5". He's more like shooting guard size. If he was like a true small forward size, it'd be even more interesting. But of course, he wouldn't have fallen as far probably if he was true small forward size. So, no, I like what I saw a lot. I mean, the jump shot may be the swing skill for him. And then defensively, I know our friend Glenn sort of looked at this a lot. He's a rookie on defense. Like, I think he played well defensively in college, but you saw him have some like just kind of mental like processing mistakes and some rotation stuff in summer league. And I'm not the number one expert on that, but I do think that my eyes saw the same thing. Like his physical tools are pretty good defensively. I kind of buy the defense, but I think that he's a rookie in a lot of ways, and he'll have to come a long way on that end of the floor too. But listen, in terms of like grading, or however you want to say that for summer league, he has to be a high end. That's a high-end result so far for what you've seen from that draft slot, especially when you factor in like they pretty much sold that pick to move back and all that stuff. Like I think if he can be just an NBA player at all, that's a huge success. And people keep that in mind as well. Like Skylar Mays was the same draft slot basically. He was 1 pick ahead last year, and like I think that they're similar in terms of prospect. Like Mays was pretty old, but so was Martin. They're different players. It's just like you're hoping to get an NBA rotation player, and that ends up being a home run. And that by the way, that's not necessarily as a rookie. That's like in year 2, 3, 4, you're hoping that for. So like he'll probably play some in College Park, but somebody asked me this, or I was brought up in today on Slack. I won't mention who that person was. You probably saw it. It was like there's a path for Martin to be in the rotation at some point this year, and I was like, kind of like, wait, probably not. And then I thought, like, look, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but stick with me here. If Bogey is out for a bit, which might happen early in the season, we don't know he's gonna be back in time for the season. They're hoping he will be, but like if he for some reason is not ready or misses some time at some point during the season, and there's a chance that Martin could be ahead of Griffin in a rotation as a rookie. Martin is 4 years older than Griffin. Obviously, Griffin's a better prospect. Obviously, that's not up for debate. But like in terms of like NBA readiness today, you might be able to argue that Martin would be more playable right now on an NBA court than AJ Griffin. I'm not sure that's the case. We have not seen AJ Griffin against professional basketball players, but like given the lack of depth with the Huerter trade and all that stuff, it's not the craziest thing in the world. I'm not saying he's going to play because he probably won't, but like if Sean D. Brown has a path, which I think he might, like, and this is by the way a path with an injury or two. Like no one's saying these guys are going to play opening night, but listen, we saw last year. We've seen every year with this Hawks team the last 3 or 4 years. There's always a week or two when they're 3 guys down, 4 guys down. It's just it's what's going to happen. And like, yeah, I can see him playing minutes for a couple weeks. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'll say is, I mean, I do pretty much agree with everything you said. The first thing I'll say is, if Tyrese Martin is logging heavy minutes in year 1, like things have gone wrong. Like something,
not a good side. Yeah, I agree.
Either injuries or something else has gone wrong. So, but I do know what you're saying. I think the Hawks are definitely less deep than they've been the past 2 years, for one.
Yep.
So, they got like a solid top 7-ish. And then after that, it's a lot of question marks. So, like you said, if Bogey goes down, someone else goes down. You've got a little bit of wing depth. But, maybe they see Martin as someone who can maybe fill, 10, 12 minutes off the bench. More than, like you said, AJ Griffin, who still may have to get up to speed after his injury. Yeah, I mean,
and just being 18 too. That's the thing about Griffin. It's not even really about the injury. It's the fact that he's 18 years old. Like, and I love that draft pick. I don't know how you felt about it. I like that draft pick a lot. But like, I would say this no matter what, any rookie is going to be mostly bad in the NBA. That's usually what it works. And the way that a one and done guy who has had not played a lot of basketball the last 2 or 3 years. Plus he's 18. Like, I'm not saying he's going to be bad as a rookie. He might be good. Maybe he can shoot. Maybe the shooting just carries him. But like, it just shouldn't surprise anyone if Nate McMillan in particular is like, I kind of trust Tyrese Martin more than AJ Griffin. That wouldn't stun me at all. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I mean, I see that. Plus in the first half of an NBA season, you're usually experimenting more. You're
Yep.
kind of tossing everything out there, seeing what kind of rotation combinations work out there. So, it definitely wouldn't surprise me to see just based on his age. I mean, you never quite know. Obviously, the Hawks, for whatever reason, the past couple seasons started slow. Injuries played a part in that. So it's definitely possible. I mean, one thing I will say is especially with this Martin deal, they're gonna need stuff like this, like as far as winning on the margins with their roster construction. Having gone in on DeJounte Murray, you're losing a lot of future picks. You're up against the tax line. Kind of makes things real difficult to actually bring in like a mid-level type player. You have some mechanisms, but again, with being so near the tax, like it's gonna be difficult to do. So you need to kind of, if the Hawks are gonna maybe surprise some people, they need to win on the margins with some of the minimum guys, Martin or some of your recent draft picks, your rookie guys. So, I mean, I don't, just with this team, obviously trying to do whatever it takes, I guess, to get to the next level. It wouldn't surprise me to try out a guy like Martin. Obviously we got some steps before we get there. We got training camp, preseason. I mean, if he continues to look good in preseason, like, I mean, there around the league, if you look around the league, there's a number of, low second rounds undrafted guys who, they find their role, they find their niche, they're good at this one thing. Miami Heat are great at that. They can find, random shooters and, they plug them in and they may make some mistakes, especially defensively early in the season, but that'll help them work through the mistakes. So by the time you get later in the season, maybe they're more comfortable, and now you're getting a lot of production out of a low second rounder.
Yeah, no, I agree for sure. I think that he he doesn't have that number one skill either. That's the one thing about Martin is that he doesn't have that like outlier trait. Like he's a good finisher, and I think the ball handling is pretty intriguing. We saw like he's not a shooter, for instance. He's not this like lockdown defender either that can like get you on the floor. It's a lot easier sometimes for a specialist to get on the floor in some respects. Like you find your that's why, by the way, for Griffin might be able to play just because of the shooting early on. He might hurt you some other places, but like especially if they don't have Bogey for whatever reason, Griffin's shooting might just be like they have to have it because they don't have enough shooting on the roster. You talked about like their lack of depth now, and they have 8 guys that they trust, but the lack of shooting could be potentially problematic, and maybe that puts Griffin back in the process all the time. Anyway, we got a long way to go on all this stuff, but I think that it's just interesting to me to keep stuff in perspective. I know I'm sort of just trying to fight a losing battle there. Fans are going to fan, and I totally get that, and they want to see their guys. And Morton was good in summer league. I'm not piling on at all. I thought he was really encouraging, but just keeping that in line because, by the way, I looked it up just now. He's already 23. He's actually 4.5 years older than Edgy Griffin. So
okay,
that's what Skylar Mays was last year. Mays was
right.
famously 24 already when he was drafted. Morton just turned 23, so he's not crazy old for a senior, but he is. I will go on the list of players that he's older than that are on the roster right now. But there's multiple guys already that I think I'm pretty sure he's older than Okongwu. He's older than guys like that, Joe and Johnson, etc. So
yeah.
All right, Wes. Before we get to a couple more things here, before we get to that, a word from our sponsors on the pod. All right, Wes. I will not keep you too much longer, but before we get to anything else that's with regard to the roster, is there anyone that you want to cape for from Summer League? I've talked about Shawnee Brown a lot. I like Shawnee Brown a lot, but there's not that much to talk about necessarily with him. I know there's a Hawks fan groundswell for Tyson Etienne after his breakout Game 4 performance. But anybody else that strikes you as noteworthy, or do you want to move on to other things?
Noteworthy. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like you said, you mentioned Etienne. I mean, Etienne's a guy who he would really benefit if he were like a couple inches taller, could work off the ball. He could actually be a 2. I think he's 6'2" right now, and they definitely tried to get him some looks on the ball. Try to run some point guard sets. They didn't have Akinjo and Sharif Cooper was out. So he had some intriguing moments, but I just don't see that being a path forward for him. The only other guy I thought impressed me, which is the Hawks Twitter favorite, Justin Tillman. He kind of slowed down towards the end of it, but the first 2 or 3 games, he was doing a really good job as a roll man. He'd get isolated in the post. He's got a good turnaround. Had a little bit of a flip shot. Basically, everything he shoots is this one arm flip. But he'd have a look, good touch on it. He was scoring efficiently. He's getting some rebounds. So doing everything like a roll man should do. I know the Hawks kind of have, kind of more premium versions of that on the roster as is. But Tillman's kind of a journeyman. He's older, 26, 27 at this point. So he may go back down to, they may try to retain him on the Skyhawks. I believe he was the first team all G League last week. So not that necessarily means you're gonna have a shot, but might be a guy they bring in on an exhibition 10 deal, a training camp deal. Continue to look at, maybe they need a little bit more front court depth. So it's kind of difficult because he's undersized for a 5. Probably can't hold his own as a 4, but he had some intriguing moments as a role guy.
Yeah, and that's honestly, there was some. I think it's for people that like Tillman, like maybe VCU fans or whatever. Like they got a little bit mad at Nick Van Assel when I asked him about Tillman early in the process, and he kind of just candidly said, "I wish he was 2 inches taller." And it's like he's not crapping on Tillman. It's just the reality. Like it's tough to be a 6'8" center, and I know Okongwu is kind of the same size, but Okongwu is like a genuine freak, and that's why it works for him. Tillman is not that. And I think that he's a pro. I mean, that's the thing about him. Like everyone likes that guy. He plays really hard. He's already an established quality G League player. But like the way that I think of him is that he's basically just a quadruple A guy. And it's unfortunate. But like he's a really good G League player that probably isn't an NBA player unless it's like a fill-in spot. But we'll see. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, like you said. They can give guys those Exhibit 10s up to like $50,000 of guaranteed money is like the cap where you can also retain their G League rights. So they can offer him the max allotted Exhibit 10 contract, pay him that, bring him to training camp, and send him back to College Park. And then he ends up earning like a 6-figure salary for the year. That's not so bad in terms of what your path could be. Last year he was on a 10-day contract too during the COVID madness for the Hawks, made some money there. I think long term, his best bet to make money is probably to go to Europe, but I don't know if that's what he wants to do. So we'll see. I like him though. I mean, and by all accounts, everybody likes the guy in the organization too. Like he's a good worker, and he's a pro. I mean, we saw even with Sharif, like who we talked about earlier, struggled a lot. When he was playing with Tillman, that was his best basketball because Tillman knows how to play screen setting, pick and roll, more speed, just like a little bit more floor balance and spacing, all that stuff too. So I like him. It wouldn't blow me away. I get a question like almost every day about him on that last 2-way spot. I think it's still going to be Sharif, to be honest, but they could do worse. Like he's a professional basketball player, no question. Like he's good.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, just kind of, break glass in case of emergency. Like I said, if they have to call him up for a 10-day, like you say, you never know when the injuries happen. He's a guy you would already trust because he's kind of already been there for the Hawks.
That's an advantage too, and I asked him about that, and he definitely leaned into it too. He's like, "Look, I already know all the plays. Like he knows all the stuff already, and that is very valuable, particularly if you get a COVID situation, if you get a couple injuries, like being able to sign that guy or bring that guy, have that guy close by." Particularly for a coach like Nate. Nate really trusts guys who know how to play, and that might be useful, I would say, if you get a situation where somebody gets banged up along the way and he's close by in College Park. So, yeah, I agree with that. Before I get you out of here, we talked about it a little bit earlier with the depth and stuff, but I want to know, because this has been a topic, and I'm trying to save most of this stuff for later on in the summer for obvious reasons, but what do you make of the roster right now? Like, how good are they is a question I keep getting all the time, and I'm not quite ready to answer it, to be honest with you. But given that they brought in Murray, that was their big swing move. They did the Kevin Huerter trade, which I didn't necessarily love, but I do understand it on some level. Like, what's your reaction been to what they've done so far? Because it kind of all happened in like a week. They were still very busy in terms of like compared to your average offseason, they did a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, I mean, so coming into the summer, I mean, I kind of had, I believe, from what the words I heard from X interviews, the things I was hearing, that they wanted to get together in 2 areas. Like they wanted to have that upper gear in the postseason, have a little bit more creation, not be so dependent on Trae Young, and then B, they really wanted to upgrade their perimeter defense. And so I think that was kind of the focus on it, and that's kind of a lot of rationale for the trades, to bring in Murray, to send out Huerter and bring in Harkless and Justin Holiday. So they definitely accomplished that to some degree. I think the question is kind of how far in the other direction they go. They lost a lot of shooting, creation, especially off their bench unit. But I think the goal is obviously to kind of try to make themselves more dangerous against great teams, as well as more dangerous in the postseason. So you got a guy like, obviously you got Trae and DeJounte Murray together. I think that's what they're trying to accomplish. In the regular season, like I said, I think on some level they're kind of treading water with all their moves as far as, does this take them to be in, have a few more wins like they were in the play-in last season. They should be maybe a little bit better as far as regular season, but I don't really think they did much on that end. I think a lot of it is, they really want to get beyond just a first round exit, and obviously they weren't very competitive in the last Heat series. So trying to get that number 2 guy. They accomplished that. I think it's going to be a little tough. Again, just where they are at financially. They handed out a lot of kind of mid-level deals, which were good on the market. When you talk about extending Capella, you talk about John Collins's not quite max extension. Herter had a good deal. You had a lot of these, $15 to $25 million a year guys. That kind of added up for them, and that's what put them on this big tax burden. So they, with all the maneuvering, like I said, the end result is, I think they did increase. I think they did upgrade their perimeter defense. They got Trae, the number 2 guy he was looking for, but is that quite good enough to have enough pieces to really make a run as a contender? As of right now, I don't think so. I think their depth is like we've mentioned is just shallower. So if they have some injuries, it might start to look pretty rough when they start to throw out those bench units. Even if you stagger Trae and DeJounte, those guys can only do so much. So I think they're just at this point they're kind of walking a fine line with the lack of depth. They're really banking on some of the young guys really stepping up. DeAndre Hunter, Jalen Johnson, Okongwu taking a step forward. Like some of those guys really step up, have some breakout years, then it starts to look better. But that's probably their only avenue upwards for this season is just having some breakout seasons occur, and then also staying healthy as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as we discussed earlier, their depth is hit and miss. Obviously, having arguably the deepest center group in the league still. People got kind of recoil when I say that, but I mean, I'm not saying it's the best because obviously Jokic and Embiid followed by anybody on earth probably is still better what the Hawks have. But like the Hawks have, you could argue the best 48 minutes of center in the league if they have Capella and Okongwu both healthy, and you throw in Collins to play whatever 5 minutes a game at center if you want to. Like they're loaded there. And obviously with Murray, if you want to count him a point guard, they're also kind of loaded there. But they have some other depth concerns for sure. So health's going to be important. And I know you know this too, but like it's like very mainstream now to say this, but I think DeAndre Hunter is like one of the more obvious X factor guys in the entire league this year. Like if he's good, their ceiling raises so much. And if he's not, it's hard to see them being that good. You know what I mean? Like it's not all tied to DeAndre Hunter by any means, but if he's the guy he was last year, like their ceiling is just not that high because he's the only guy on their roster that does what he does as that big physical 2-way wing. And like, I like Justin Holiday, but Justin Holiday is much more of a 2-3, a little bit smaller, a little bit more frail. He's a pretty good defender, but he's a pure 3-and-D role player. And that's not what the Hunter is right now. So I don't know. I'm intrigued by it all, to be honest, but, and like the standing stuff is, I mean, I already saw, I won't say where because I'm not allowed to, but I won't say, I saw some over-unders already coming out. We're in that time of the year where like projections are occurring, and it will not stun me to see anyone pick the Hawks like anywhere from like 5 to 9 or 10 coming into the season in the East. Like I can't imagine anyone picking them outside of Hawks fans ahead of teams like Boston, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, probably Miami. Like those 4 teams from last year, I can't see the Hawks being picked ahead of those teams. Can they beat those teams? Maybe. Sure. I'm not saying that they can't, but being picked ahead of them. And then, like, if Brooklyn still has KD or something, Brooklyn's the giant wild card. I have no idea. But, like, they're probably in a similar range to teams like Toronto and maybe Brooklyn, maybe Cleveland, maybe Chicago, et cetera. Like, that's the kind of group that they're probably going to be grouped in with right now. And that's appropriate unless they show that they're better than that. I think this roster is better than it was, but better in a way that also could go south if they get one injury at a bad time or some things go wrong. So, like, it's kind of fascinating. Like they definitely are not like a contender right now, which is unfortunate for us talking about them and covering them every day. But I mean, I know the Hawks fans want that to be the case with Murray, and Murray's really good, but he doesn't single-handedly make them as good as the Bucks or the Celtics.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of acquiring Murray obviously that's a long term thing. Like you're trying to pair him with Trae Young long term. So it's not
Sure.
like a 1 year deal where they're trying to go in and win a championship right now. If they thought that move was going to do it, I think they're sometimes expectations get a little bit.
It's kind of one of those moves that's like it's a short term move and a long term move. Like as well as I do, which the stuff that we've heard and talked about offline, like they definitely have pressure from up top to win now. And that was part of doing the Murray deal. But I agree with you. Like, that's not a move that you do on its own. And the other move, because the other big move they did was the Hurd trade, which didn't really make them better. Like, you could argue it didn't kill them necessarily, but that was not an improving in the short term kind of move. So it's like you do this move and it feels like kind of an all-in move, but it's not good enough to make you as good as you want to be right now. So it's like kind of a move that's for a long term, like you said, but also with some short term focus because I mean, like they don't do that trade unless they think that it's going to help them now too. And it should help them now. But I agree. It's more of a setup move on paper. And like, what's the next move is still the question that everybody has for me across the league when I see them in Vegas. Maybe you got this too from people around that you saw, but like, it's like, all right, what do the Hawks do now? And it's like, well, they already made this pretty big move for Murray. Like they traded 3 picks, but like, it's a natural question to be like, all right, what's the next move? Because I don't know the answer to that, but it felt like it was going to happen and they just didn't do anything else. So it's like, here we are.
Right. I mean, and obviously like, elephant in the room is the John Collins. It's kind of been, floated around for forever. It seems like
still on the team, John Collins.
Right. I mean, honestly, at this point, there's no John Collins move where you're better tomorrow. Like, there's just not really a move that's materialized like that. Maybe you can, liquidate and get young guys and picks or whatever. But then you're kind of questioning, okay, what was the logic behind trading for DeJounte Murray if you're gonna take a step forward and take a step back? So, I mean, I think right. I think some of it is right. Some of it is. We'll just have to kind of wait and see how do Young and Murray work together. Like can Murray kind of replicate his All-Star campaign from last year? I think there's some question that maybe that's his peak. Like maybe he'll take a small step back when he's outside of San Antonio and things can't be run for him the same way. We just kind of wait and see. I mean, if you're asking what the next step is, I think in an ideal world is somehow find a number 3 guy, but that would most likely involve acquiring a star big man. And I know they had obviously tried to weasel their ways into DeAndre Ayton talks and all that, and if you do that, then you're obviously going to have to ship off a guy like Capella and John Collins and Pablo Kongwu to try to find like a guy you think, okay, if I have Young, Murray, and this star big man, maybe that's a championship contender right there. But those moves that takes 2 to tango. Like those moves just aren't out there all the time. Like you can't just find a star big man who's on the market all the time. So at the moment, I think you're just kind of waiting and seeing like how does this team look? How do they look at the trade deadline? Reassess your options. How do they look at the end of the season? I think one thing I'm looking at going forward is there's kind of a ticking time bomb as far as DeJounte Murray's contract because he's making about 17.5 million this year, next year. But after that point, most likely if he continues to play like this, like he's gonna command a max deal or something very, very close to that. So, if you're thinking Trae Young's on a max deal, DeJounte Murray's on a max deal, like that's 2/3 of your cap right there. So there's kind of all your maneuverability is going to happen within this year, next year to kind of get that structure settled and then figure out the kind of financials at that point.
Yeah, I mean, and the other side of that with Murray, and I like Murray a lot, but the other side of that is if he doesn't stay, you just made this trade of a lot of capital for a guy who leaves in 2 years, and because of the extension stuff that I know about, but for Hawks fans, like they can't pay him enough legally under the salary cap right now to get him to sign an extension. Like he just can't. It's not his fault either. I mean, the Hawks can't offer as much as he would take, and he shouldn't take what they can offer him. So like they're kind of hands tied on that. And I think that there is always some level of risk for anybody that's going to be a UFA. Like he's going to hit the market in 2 years, no matter what happens. He's going to hit the market almost certainly. So it's like that's the other downside. Is like, what if he leaves?
That's a disaster. I mean, like you just traded 2 unprotected firsts, after his
after that's over. No, it's so I'm not trying to doomsday anybody, but it really is a pivotal time. And then we could probably spend 30 minutes on the center situation too, because at some point they're going to have to move on from Capella or Kongwu, because it just doesn't make sense to keep having a Kongwu be a backup center, but that's where he is right now. So there's it's the same stuff we've been talking about for a year plus in a lot of ways, but and Collins is the perpetual trade candidate. So it's like, it's the same storylines a lot of the way, but now with a guy, and I'll say this, like Murray is their best player they've had in the Trae Young era, besides Trae. So like that's a good thing. You've added a guy who I think fits with him pretty well. It's not like 100% perfect, but it does make some sense on both sides of the floor. And they've acquired a talented guy, and they didn't have to trade anything present value that was nearly as much. Like going from Gallo to Murray talent-wise is a giant upgrade. It's just that you've sort of maybe downgraded with the Herter trade and also traded a bunch of your picks away. So it's like they're kind of shuffling the deck chairs a little bit, and we'll see how good they are, because I'm ready to see them play now. I mean, we still have to wait three more months. Like training camp's going to open in like 10 weeks, something like that. That's a long time, Wes. Long time.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think there's going to be some acclimation period as far as Young, DeJounte, and I think the other bigger thing is how much do they stagger? Like you got to have one of those guys on the court for 48 minutes. Like just the way that the roster is, like you got to do it.
I totally agree. And like they also don't. I mean, I like Aaron Holiday, but Aaron Holiday is more of like an off-ball lead guard. Like he's not really a guy who's going to run your offense a lot. And Herter was their best secondary creator on the roster. He's no longer there. So like if there was ever a time that they were going to stagger, they got to do it now. Like they have to. That's going to drive us all crazy. If Nate on opening night does not stagger them, I'm going to lose my mind. So,
I'll be right there with you. We'll be the same place there.
Absolutely. But yeah, I will. I'll probably beg you to come on again at some point in the next aforementioned 10 weeks, because there's a lot of content to sift through in the near future. But I appreciate you coming on, spending some of your recovery period post Vegas with me on this. We're actually recording on Sunday. I think it's going to go up on either Monday or Tuesday. But here we are. Wes, thank you for joining me. Please plug anything you got going on. Have you been writing anything at Peachtree Hoops? Did Zach make you chronicle your journey through Vegas, or what's going on?
No, all I did recently, I tweeted the first 3 games from the Peachtree Hoops account. I'll probably be doing that going forward. But other than that, obviously, I'll try to get some things written over at Peachtree Hoops, previewing the season. Once we get into it, obviously, this is a little bit of a down period. Hopefully, we'll have some, maybe analysis of what we can look forward towards the next season. But yeah, continue to read peachtreehoops.com. Follow me at BlogHawk. It's the off season, but I'm still be tweeting random Hawks figures and notes and things. So please follow me there. And
for people that don't know Wes's work, Wes has been around, at least kind of around the Hawks blogging game for quite some time. One of the longer tenured people now, other than I guess me and maybe Kevin. But thank you for joining me.
Thanks. Friend. Yeah. OG of the game, I guess.
OG of the game, indeed. But yeah, sincerely follow Wes's work. Follow Peachtree Hoops, where I used to be the editor and still am a reader voraciously. And I'm also still on the Slack channel, talking trash to all of them on a daily basis. But thank you, Wes, for being here. And as for everybody else, please subscribe to the podcast, follow the show on Twitter, etc. And we'll see you all next time.